All right, welcome to the next video in the Red Team series as we're going through TryHackMe's new Red Team learning path. In this one, we'll be covering Red Team threat intelligence. And as you're learning this stuff and leveling up, eventually you're going to come to the point we're ready to start applying to jobs. And at that point, you're definitely going to need to arm yourself with the top 10 interview questions that you need to know to ace your next pen testing interview. So go ahead and check that out down in the description below. But without further ado, let's dive right into it. This one was a very interesting section, and I think if you're someone that has only done pen testing and haven't really dove into the red team side of things, this is where things get quite a bit different and quite a bit interesting, because there is an area of cybersecurity actually on the blue team side called cyber threat intelligence. And if you're not too familiar, what this is they're looking at actual attacks by different APTs, which are advanced persistent threat actors. So I'm talking about real hacking groups out there, and they are uncovering what is known as their TTP, so their tactics, techniques, and procedures. So after a threat acting group, executes a successful, let's just say, breach or hack against a company, you have the threat intelligence team that will go in and look for IOCs or indicators of compromise and find out what did the threat acting group do? What did the APTs do, right? What tools did they use? Their tactics and their procedures, like what is everything they use? And they kind of compile that information into different databases that you can find readily available online. And as you see, I have a ton of tabs open because this is really interesting to research, right? So they reference these ISACs, right? Information and Sharing Analysis Centers, where they're gathering this information. And you might be familiar, you might have actually looked at different APTs before. You could use a site like MITRE.org, and you can look at, these are all the different APTs that they have information on. So I can just click into a random one here, like, I don't know, Blue Mockingbird. You can read about it and to see what that is. I'm not too familiar with this one, but this one's involving the Monero cryptocurrency mining and things like that. And then you could see what techniques did they use specifically, right? What software did they use? And what's really cool is we'll see in a little bit, we can actually open this up and look at even further information. But let's not get ahead of ourselves here. This is typically something that they're going to do on the blue team side. Threat intelligence, right? But as red teamers, we can actually leverage this as well. And depending on the engagement, remember in the previous video, we're talking about on some of your red team engagements, you may be asked to emulate a specific APT. And this is exactly how you go about doing it. You leverage the data out there collected by the threat intelligence teams to see what tools to use and tactics and procedures. And then you just emulate that in the red team engagement so you can best emulate that APT, right? So that's how we can use it as a red teamer. So there's a few things that we need to be aware of in order to do this successfully. So we're going to need to be aware of the kill chain, right? The tactics, the objectives, and goals. There's a couple different frameworks. So you have the Tiber EU framework, and you have the MITRE attack framework and stuff like that. So it goes into depth a little bit on what this is, right? So just to read off a little bit for those that are not familiar with this, it was developed by the European Central Bank, centered around the use of threat intelligence. And here's a little snippet from the white paper. It says, the framework for threat intelligence-based ethical red teaming enables European and national authorities to work with financial infrastructures and institutions, hereafter referred to collectively as entities, to put in place a program to test and improve their resilience against sophisticated cyber attacks. And then it points out the main difference between this framework and others is the testing phase right here that requires threat intelligence to feed the red team's testing. So really interesting. We're actually feeding into the testing so we can best emulate a specific APT. So let's look at these TTPs, these techniques, tactics, and procedures. So this is a diagram you might be familiar with before, the cyber kill chain. We have recon, weaponization, delivery, exploitation, installation, command and control, and then actions on objectives. And so what we could do is we could pull up any APT, so APT 39 in this example, and I hate how that does not open in a new tab. But yeah, let me just clear this out. get rid of these tabs here. And this is what we're about to be diving into in a little bit, as you'll see. But we could dive into this APT 39. We could take a look at, what were they mostly targeting? So this is Iranian Ministry of Intelligence and Security. Through a front company called Rana Intelligence Computing since at least 2014. They primarily targeted the travel, hospitality, academic, and telecommunications industries in Iran and across Asia, Africa, Europe, and North America to track individuals and entities considered to be a threat to the MOIS. And from here, we can really dive in and see all kinds of info about them. But just going back to this room here under the TTP mapping, we can see this attack navigator. This is really interesting here. But instead of creating a new layer or whatever, what we can do is actually use that other link to open up the mapping for this particular APT. So if we go right here under APT 39 and then click view, it'll open and it'll highlight what all this APT is using out of the MITRE attack framework. So the MITRE attack framework is slightly different than the cyber kill chain. In a little bit, we'll look at how they map together. But for now, know that each one of these maps roughly to a different step in the cyber kill chain, which is this right here. And so everything highlighted in blue is what APT 39 uses, and we could kind of hover over them and get more information on this stuff. We could look at their tools and things like that. And of course, we can get a lot of info just from the MITRE attack page as well on APT 39, and we can see what techniques they used. We can see what software they used as well. So this could be an amazing way to really, I know a lot of people that watch this channel are interested in not only how to solve CTFs and things like that and get certifications, but also they have an interest in what do real attackers use? Well, what better way to understand and answer this question than to look at, threat intelligence data of what specific APTs are using. This is exactly what they're using according to the cyber threat intelligence data that was gathered out there based off forensic data and things like that. So we can know very conclusively what they're using. We don't even have to guess. So not only is this good if you're a red teamer, but also from an educational standpoint, if you want to look into some of these tools, maybe practice them in your own custom environment, your own lab environment. That what a better, wouldn't be any better way to get a feel for that than this, right? So very cool stuff, in my opinion, at least. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of these here. They have us look into an APT called Carbonac, and they have some questions on, like how many C2 techniques do they use. So basically what you do for that is we can go here and we'll just go to Carbonac on the left here. And now we have all their stuff. We can open this view here and see what all Carbonac uses. They're asking about the command and control. So we go over here under command and control, and it looks like they're using two different things, remote access software and bidirectional communication. And we can hover over that for a little bit more info. And yeah, for bidirectional communication, for example, I know this is really small, but it says has used a VB script named GGLDR that uses Google Apps Script, Sheets, and Form services for C2. So really interesting. But yeah, there's two, right? And then we can look at other things like what do they use for defense evasion? They use Run DLL 32. What initial access technique is employed by Carbonac? Valid accounts. And all this information can be found in this page here. And then we talk about other applications of cyber threat intelligence, or CTI. We can use it to emulate their behaviors, such as the C2 traffic, malware and tooling, all of that stuff. There's a lot. We talk about malleable profiles. Well, you can gather that from this data here that they've already basically gathered. You can see how to set that up. And then, this section is pretty short here. We're just covering what all we could gather from this stuff, you know, like their custom droppers they might use to drop malware on the against the target. We could look at API calls, syscalls, and any kind of tampering they might do, any kind of IOCs, indicators of compromise. So then if we wanted to actually use this in our own red team engagement, say we have a target and they want us to emulate a specific APT, how would we go about it? Well, we can, you know, reference these two tools here. We can say, okay, we need to, in this case, what did they say? If we were to emulate APT 41, we could go there. Let me just click here. It'll be a little bit faster. We could see what techniques they use, what tools they use, all that stuff. And we could see how it maps to the MITRE attack framework. So we could view that. And they give us a handy little mapping here. So this is how the cyber kill chain will map to the MITRE attack framework. So recon is reconnaissance, weaponization is execution, and so on and so forth. You see how these things map over. So then from here, all it's asking us to do is... based on APT 41, what is, weaponization? Like, what weaponization do they use? Which weaponization is execution here. So we just go to the execution section, and it's kind of tricky, this particular room. They want you to pick the first one in each category. So we would just type PowerShell here, and then for this one, this would be delivery or initial access under this chart here. So the first one under initial access, it will be spear phishing attachment, so that's what we put, and so on and so forth. And you get the idea. Mainly, the takeaway here is how do you go about figuring out what their tactics and techniques and procedures are, and, well, you could just look at this under each category in the MITRE attack framework, and we can see on this chart how it maps back to the cyber kill chain and, you know, vice versa. And from there, a few other questions it's asking us is, how do we, or what web shell is it they're, you know, using, and what LOBAS techniques are they using for file transfer? What are they using to mine and monitor SMS traffic? All this is very easily found on this page here under this APT. So for example, let's just look for a transfer. So in order to do these file transfers, they are using certutil, which we can see just scrolling through here, which is actually a file transfer tool living off the land that I prefer to use all the time on Windows systems. So yeah, pretty cool to know that I'm using something that other threat actors are using. Maybe you guys are as well. So definitely a cool thing to find out, right? Another thing that they asked is about the web shell, right? That's this ASPX spy. Never heard of this one. Maybe I should check it out. I've looked at a couple threat actors now, and I saw they are using this web shell. Probably pretty handy against IS servers and stuff like that. So definitely something to check out as well. And as well, these other tools and stuff that I might not be familiar with, you might not be familiar with. Hey, maybe a good reason to look into it. So hopefully that one helped. And similar thing here with the SMS traffic. We can see this tool here. Are you guys familiar with this one? Maybe you are, maybe you're not. Let me know down in the comments section below. I'd love to hear it. And hopefully you guys are enjoying this series so far. In the next one, we will be just continuing on with these rooms under the red team path. So if you want to get caught up in this series, go and check out some of the technical videos I have on screen for you right now. I'll see you guys right over in those videos. Thanks for watching.